When we think interpersonal relationships, our first thought most often is we're thinking about romance, about our life partners, about the individuals that we are closest to. And as I've said over the weeks, we're kind of building all that information we've done in the past to this section. Now let's begin to talk about romance. What we want to do in this section is we want to define what a romantic relationship is, how attraction occurs. We're going to talk about Knapp's theory on interpersonal relationships and on the life cycle of relationships, how we maintain relationships, and finally, our choices that we make in relationships. I'm also going to post a couple videos, links underneath this from YouTube, so you can go there and watch those. In class, I'd actually have them in the PowerPoint, but because I have to save this on YouTube and then reshare it, I don't want to violate anybody's copyrights or be utilizing other people's material outside of where they have intended for it to be used. For that reason, after you get done with this presentation, please go watch those other ones, and hopefully they'll explain more in depth to you exactly what I want to share with romance. What we want to start with is let's define what a romantic relationship is. We often use the term love when we're referring to relationships. The thing is, we love a lot of things, or at least we say we do. And exactly how we value love and how we're defining it is very different. Oh, I love a sunny day. I love pizza. I love cake. All these items we say we love. But are we talking about we love them the same as we love our spouse, as our significant other? Or even to another degree, what is the difference between loving and liking? Liking is a feeling of affection and respect that we typically have for our friends. Do you think that covers it? Do you love your friends? Are there friends that you love and friends that you like? So you have to almost define this for yourself. Do you love all your friends, or do you like some of them? And if so, where's the division? And once again, this is going to create self-reflection for you. You need to look internally and decide if this is indeed how you want to define it. Loving is vastly deeper and more intensive emotional experience and consists of three components: intimacy, caring, and attachment. Now, once again, going back to our friends, we can have intimacy, not in that way. Intimacy goes back to the social penetration theory. We'll talk about that in a moment. Caring, we care for them, and we have attachment to them. But you have to decide if you want to use that term love for friends or liking. It's kind of your call. When we look at romantic love, here are our three corners of the triangle that forms into love. And depending on where we are in a relationship, we may be more towards one than the other. Intimacy, are we more committed to them? Are we more passionate? And passion is actually that physical attraction. Now, when you start looking at these, as you can see in front of you, you have romantic love, which is more of an intimacy and passion combined, where you're very open with them and you're very attached to them. Oftentimes, we think of this early in a relationship. Now, you can have compassionate love, where you have intimacy and commitment, but not so much passion. Now, you can think of this, there are times that we go through each of these stages within our own relationships. And factitious love is passion and commitment. But what we all kind of shoot for is that consummate love, where we're having a balanced triangle where we're having a little bit of each. And realize, as we said, life is dynamic, so these things can change. It may not always be romantic love. You may go through periods of time where romance isn't what you need. You need the compassionate, and you need the person to be there committed for you. So love and romantic relationships are like everything we've talked about, dynamic, changing, and there will be stages that we go through in a relationship, which is fine. Intimacy. Now, intimacy, like I said, goes back to our social penetration theory in that you're being vulnerable. You're exposing your deeper thoughts and your concerns with someone. And normally we only do that when we truly like a person or we love a person. It's not something we do with strangers. And that's where we're starting to see, once after you feel, okay, I can share with this person, that's one of those signs you're looking for in a romantic relationship. It's internal. It's what lies beneath the surface and makes us all different. I mean, we can all look at what makes us similar, but when you're being vulnerable to a person, you're exposing what makes you different. Maybe it's your fears, maybe it's your hopes, your dreams, but all those things roll into what is intimacy. Passion. Passion is one of those crazy emotions that we oftentimes feel early in love, and it's a case of where you just have a hunger and a desire to be around the person. Passion is where you get physical attraction. Now, passion can be throughout a relationship, but it oftentimes is more heated at one moment and less in another, and it can be reborn again. Commitment. Commitment is one of those things we truly want in a relationship. When we're with someone, we don't want them to be passionate, intimate with another person. We want them to be committed to us, not for a short term, but for a long term. And through this commitment, what we're hoping is that we grow together and we share things. Once again, they have become close in our sphere of influence, and we've opened up through social penetration theory. We've kind of exposed ourselves. We've been vulnerable, and in turn, they've done likewise. And that shows commitment to us. And all these have been important aspects going forward. Another way of looking at love in a relationship, other than the triangle which we spoke of, is the 6 forms that love can present itself in. Now, this is not completely separate from the triangle. It's just another way of viewing it, another way of adding names to it, such as Eros love, which is beauty and sexuality, or Ludus love, which is entertainment and excitement. Once again, both of those can be early in relationships, but they have a tendency to have a hard time being long-term relationships. It's always difficult to be always sexually attractive and great at 2 in the morning when you have the flu bug and you feel like crap. So perhaps that type of love cannot be enduring. Ludus is always hard to be exciting, spur of the moment. No, sometimes we have our down times as well. Storge love is peaceful and slow, and that is a type of slowly moving into a relationship. Pragma is practical and traditional, kind of your arranged marriages. And when you think about arranged marriages, we usually think of them in a negative term. However, in some cultures and in some groups, that works very well. Mania love is just high and low, fast and slow. It is a roller coaster ride, a rapid one. What we all are kind of shooting for is the agape love, which is you have compassionate and selflessness, and you're kind of experiencing each other and you're being vulnerable, and it's very important that that connection is there. Or agape love, I believe, is another way it is pronounced. Now, there are key elements that we have in creating a romantic relationship? First of all, is perception. If the other person does not recognize you or does not see you in a romantic way, and they do not perceive you as a romantic partner, then you don't truly have romance. You always hear the tale of, oh, if only she would recognize me, if only he could see me. In that case, you're not talking about a romantic relationship. Diversity. Now, romantic relationships can happen in the lack of diversity, where you don't really have a lot of, you're in a small community, there's not that many people to choose from. Meanwhile, when you go to a university or you go to a college that's attracting people from around the state, around the nation, suddenly diversity becomes important. Choice. You have to choose to be in a romantic relationship. If you've chosen not to be in a romantic relationship, it's hard for that relationship to grow and to develop. There does need to be commitment in a romantic relationship. If it's short term and there's no commitment and that's yours, this is my life, we're totally separate, that's not a relationship of the romantic type. That might be a partnership, that might be some type of agreement, contractual or otherwise, but it's not with commitment. There will always be tension within a relationship. As we've noticed, as we've been around our loved ones more and more of the last few weeks, that indeed there can be tension. Even though you love that person, you're in a romantic relationship with them, there's tension. In order for a relationship to work, there also must be communication. As we're talking about the sphere of influence, social penetration theory, etc., that is all formats of we need to communicate. And when we're talking about the phenomenological approach of where we're attempting to view the world from the other person's viewpoint in order to understand them, in order to enrich our communication, well, it all starts with sharing and with communication. Now, traditionally, when we're talking about romantic attraction, we're talking about the earlier portion of a relationship. Proximity used to be much more important. We used to need to be in the area in order to be romantically attracted towards a person. Now we have to look at how is that modified through the internet and through our multiple forms of communication that we have. Proximity is not necessarily as important as it once was. We can fall into love in a relationship with a person in another state, in another country, far away from where we live. Something that always does play into it, though, is a level of physical attraction towards a person. We always figure beauty is good. That is not necessarily always true. When you start to look at studies, we find that we fall in love with people that are similar to us on the attractiveness scale. Sometimes beauty is intimidating. Other times, we like to feel comfortable and open around people, and it's easier when we feel that we are similar physically in attraction level. Once again, that's a personal thing, and you have to decide what is right. So that's the matching part. Is it that, hey, beauty is always good? No. It's a case of where when we can see the beauty inside a person, it becomes even more so important for us. Another part of a romantic attraction, birds of a feather. We like people who like the things we like. If a person can sit down and talk Star Trek with me or Star Wars, or maybe if a person can talk about romantic comedies with you or thriller movies or horror movies, those are always early indications of similarities that will draw us together. That's the birds of a feather effect. Now, some say it's more of opposites attract. Oh, well, she is really, really good at parties, and she's an extrovert and she gets along well. Her husband, on the other hand, is a complete introvert and he completely stays inside, and they make it work. And that can be true. It's not as often the truth as birds of a feather. But in your own relationships, you need to decide if it works well for you or not. And then there has to be some form of reciprocal liking. You can't hate a person and be in a long-term romantic relationship with them. It just doesn't work. Eventually that breaks down. So you have to like each other at some level and hopefully love each other at some level in order for it to be a long-lasting relationship. Now, when we enter into a relationship after we've gotten past the attraction, we're looking at resources. Part of our commitment comes from the fact that we share resources. This is the social exchange theory, which means I'm giving something to the relationship, you're giving something to the relationship, and together that relationship is stronger. And that is an important thing. We talked about equity in our conflict section. It does help that I'm willing to do things inside the house and around the house that helps my wife. It helps that my wife is willing to do the same thing. It helps with my son and his husband that they also share. And having equity shares the benefits and the costs, the good and the bad. Maybe I don't want to discipline the kids this week, but she'll pick up for it. That's not something positive. That's not a benefit. That's a cost. But then when it comes to, hey, we're going to go out and have a great time at Estes Park, well, that's sharing the benefits. Knapp's theories of a relationship. Now, Knapp's theory was very much a fatalistic type of view in that we went up and then we went back down. Eventually, all relationships dissolve, which is unfortunately now a little box of my head. But he has initiating. Yeah, we always have to initiate. We always have to make some type of contact with that person. Whether it be a phone call, whether it be talking to him at lunch, some type of initiation occurs. Many relationships end there. You send out, hey, let's go and have lunch. And they're like, no, I don't think so. Well, there you go. We've already gotten to the dissolving without even getting halfway up the staircase. Then we start experimenting. When you go on that first date, hey, what do you like? What bands do you listen to? What kind of movies do you like? Do you like this kind of food? What about that kind of food? You start experimenting. And then, after you've started bonding, getting some of these connections together, you start intensifying it. And when you're intensifying it, you are making sure that the relationship is going forward for you. Establish your mutual awareness and begin to lay out ground rules. This is where you start getting the, I don't like when you go out bowling without me, or I don't like, or perhaps I really like when we do this together. This is where you start finding out what type of relationship the person has or wants. Integrating. Suddenly, you show up and your friends say, hey, where is? You've started to become one. Slowly, your relationship has gone from two separate lives, and now you're sharing a life. And within this, you can find things that make it unique. This will also be the part of the dating where you start doing dorky things like wearing the same shirts or wearing the same colors, matching clothes, really kind of dorky things. Maybe combining your names like Bradgelina, things like that. Bonding. This is the formal establishment of a relationship. This can be where You go out and you make it a Facebook official. You've been shipped or confirmed. I can never get those right. I just need to catch up on this new lingo. But this is where you can also get married or engaged, or you can make some other declaration. And at this point, you've plateaued. This is the top of the relationship. Now let's look at his downside. Differentiation. This is where you start to take things back, where you're like, no, I want to be seen as me. And you kind of start separating out from being the partnership that you were. Circumscribing. You create a distance between you and the other person. And this can be intentional, or it can just kind of slowly occur over time. Stagnation. Stagnation is where everything is just the same old, same old. Nothing new is sparked. And it's just kind of like being there. And because you no longer can handle being there, you move into avoiding the other person. And with the avoiding, you start putting a distance. And you stay away and you minimize the amount of time you spend with them. And then finally is the termination of the relationship, which is the end. Now, he had a very one-directional view of this. Me, on the other hand, I almost feel like we dance on the staircase. You know, yes, we start going up, but we're not stagnant people. We're dynamic people. And so we can always go back to that experimenting and that intensifying. I'm taking this class. I'm learning this. I'm taking an art class. I'm expressing myself in this manner. And it can be something new and invigorating that you bring back into the relationship that intensifies it. So even if you're saying, oh, you know, we've kind of gotten to stagnation in our relationship, I guess we might as well go ahead and terminate it because it's all downhill from there. That's not true. Instead, you can try to reconnect. You can reinitiate. You can reintensify. You can even go back out, and that's where you hear people getting married, renewing their vows. All those can occur, and it's a case of increasing and bringing that relationship back to life. Now, maintaining strategies. Here are some of those ways that you dance on that staircase. Being positive. If you're always negative towards your significant other, you're going to hit stagnation. That relationship is going to go downward. On the other hand, if you're positive towards them, and then you go into assurances with them, not only positive, but you assure them that yes, you can achieve that A in the class you're looking at. Yes, you can get that job promotion. I believe in you. Those positive assurances help a person. Sharing of tasks. Sometimes we need to step back and say, wait a minute. What am I contributing to the relationship? What am I bringing into it? Perhaps you need to say, hon, I got dinner tonight. You relax. Or unexpectedly, I'm doing the laundry or mowing the lawn. No one had to ask me. There was no indication of a debt due. But instead you begin sharing more tasks to help your partner get through their day. Accepting your partner for who they are. That's another maintaining strategy. As they are a dynamic person and they are changing and they are becoming someone else, accept that new person. Don't say, oh, gee, now that you got that promotion, you don't have any time for me, I'm done type of thing. Instead, accept it and encourage them. Self-disclosure. Once again, sharing doesn't just happen in the intensifying portion of it. It happens throughout the relationship. Share your thoughts. Share how your day is. Share things. Have relationship talks. This is going to be difficult. Every now and then step back and together have that invitational rhetoric where you're saying, okay, this is how I'm feeling in the relationship. How are you feeling? And listen to them. And this way you can share that information and you can work on that. Social networks. In relationships, share that social network. If you have new friends, let your spouse be a part of that as well. Don't exclude them, but share the social networks. Deciding whether to maintain. This is when you're on that downside of the naps theory, and you really kind of looked at it, and either you can focus on what's tearing you apart or what keeps you together. And that's an important thing. Are you still in love? And don't just think about the love you felt when you were in that deep, intensive, passionate situation, because that passion fades and comes back. So who you ideally see the person has during that first week of a relationship isn't going to be the person that you get to know in the long term, because you idealize them in the early portion of a relationship. And then you have to decide, is your relationship equitable? Is both parties contributing to the relationship, or is one doing all the withdrawing and the other one's doing all the depositing? Because I'll tell you what, the person doing the depositing is going to struggle staying in that relationship. Do you share the same values? Have your values changed over time and you no longer share those? Can you share the same values as your partner has developed? You have to decide, you have to review that. And then family also and friends will impact if that relationship is going to be maintained. I hate to say it, but if your family and your friends always hated the person, when there's a little chip in that relationship, they're going to spread that relationship wide open. And they're going to dump all the information that they always dislike the person on you at that moment. So you need to decide which one is more important, your relationship or your friends and relationships with family. There's always a dark side. Always. There's betrayal. It can be any number of types of betrayal. It can be the type of betrayal when we're talking about the social penetration theory, or when we're talking about where you share something and then they don't share back. And so you feel that you've made yourself vulnerable and exposed yourself, and they don't. And in those cases, you really need to try to work on what you expect from them and what they can give. Another aspect is, do they talk about you behind your back? That's a form of betrayal. Do they always refer to you as the ball and chain? Or the, gee, I'd love to do that, but, the boss. Have their pet terms turned into derogatory terms. The vulture, the pit viper, the boss. Watch for those things. Those are all types of betrayals. And if you're feeling betrayed, you need to quickly at that point say, this is why I feel that way. I really hate when you call me the ball and chain when you're hanging out with your friends. That's not right. So talk to them. Sexual infidelity, always once again. And you have to decide what infidelity is. In some cases, infidelity is something like holding a hand, kisses on the cheek, a hug that's too long. You need to decide this within your relationship and talk to your spouse. That's part of the rulemaking in NAPS. When he's talking about integration, that's the type of rules he's talking about. You're texting your ex-girlfriend 5 times a day. That could be, in many cases, considered infidelity. This is a decision for you to make. Then, deception. Are they deceiving you? Are they lying to you? Are they gaslighting? Are they just using you and they deceive you? Deception, again, you have to decide how you define that in your relationship. Jealousy. Now, jealousy has almost gone to a new level because of aspects of our social media. It can be easily developed. You're chatting with or you're friends with someone that you were romantically involved with previously. That creates anger, fear, and sadness. And that is what jealousy is. Is it causing you to feel insecure? Is projection involved? Are you the one actually doing all this time paying attention to a potential romantic partner? And thus, in order to hide that, you accuse your partner of it? You have to decide. And past relationship issues. That's one thing you don't want to carry forward in any relationship. What is behind you is behind you. You don't want to bring it forward. That's a hard burden to carry. And it can be a hard burden to leave behind. But at some juncture for the health of your relationships, you do leave it behind. Now, relationship intrusions. Do you still have privacy in a relationship? You probably should. Should there be privacy because you need to hide something? That's probably not a good thing. But if your spouse needs to call you or your significant other needs to check up on you 5 times a day, and if you miss one, they're upset, you might look at that as a violation or an intrusion. Do they need to always see your cell phone and check your messages? Do they need to go through your emails? You need to decide what an intrusion is, because that can be a violation, and that can lead towards bad relationships and the breakdown of a relationship. Signs that you're in an abusive relationship. All these are important things to look at, and if you're saying yes to them, then you really need to decide, is that relationship going to be good for you? Do you feel afraid being around your partner? Do you feel that you deserve to be mistreated by your partner, and do they do that? Are they emotionally numb or helpless? You need to look at these. Does your partner humiliate you, criticize you, bring you down, blame you for their behaviors? See you as property or an object? As you read through these, look on these and say, okay, does this apply to a relationship? Does it not? If you're in an abusive relationship, I do not recommend ever staying in an abusive relationship, because usually abuse doesn't get better. It may go through periods of less abuse, but doesn't always resolve itself. If you're in a relationship that you feel is abusive, that's a good time to get a third-party therapist or someone involved that can help you both see the relationship and both sort through it. So in conclusion, let's review what we talked about today. We talked about romantic relationships, attraction, Knapp's model, as well as maintaining a relationship and your choices in a relationship. Remember, in a relationship, it is you that has the power. You can give the power to the other person, or you can maintain your power. In the end, the choice of a relationship is your own.